How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another FPL video. I can say that this is our first exclusive FPL video for the 2020-2021 season. The first one was a stream which we did over on Twitch. We'll be doing another one of those this Friday coming, same time, 7 p.m. EST. So make sure to follow us on all the platforms. It's Pilot Flame 226. We're going to be doing a lot of streams over there, gaming streams, and hopefully the fixtures will be out by then. There have been some kind of like whoopsie daisies, as it were, from the FPL site. A couple people, when they went to go do their team, saw a couple of the fixtures, and there's some pretty interesting ones. City have a very favorable fixture at home to Crystal Palace, apparently, in game week 1. United playing Arsenal. There's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about there. So when we get those, we'll be talking about that on Friday's stream over on Twitch, so make sure to follow us there. Links are also in the description below. But today we're going to be talking about 5 things that I think you need to make sure you're thinking about game in, game out in next year's season. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first tip out of all of them is that make sure you pay attention to the deadline. So some people have a habit of being like, oh yeah, I'll do my team, I'll set it up whenever I feel like it. And that can sometimes, bite them in the butt, basically. And if you make sure your team is set up at least the night before, you know that if you go to do any last minute changes, that at least the team that you have set up is one that is favorable for you. If you try to make some last minute transfers and some things don't go through, that can happen from time to time. But now the most important thing is that the deadline has been pushed back 30 minutes. So if we look here, it says game week 1 Saturday, September 12th, which is when the league's supposed to start, at 9:30. This is in my local time. Now, normally the games kick off at 11 a.m. my time, which is 3 p.m. in the UK. So the deadline should be at 10 a.m. my time. However, it says 9:30, which means that they made the deadline a half an hour earlier so that you are less likely to get team news information. So what does this do? Well, one, it makes it so that anyone who is heavily reliant on team news now has to go off the unknown. So it makes Pep Roulette even more fun because we can, instead of getting fake team news, now we get no team news so that there's no mystery around Pep's, team, or there is a mystery rather, and you just can't figure out what he's going to be doing, as well as many others. So Solskjaer, typically whatever he says, it's the exact opposite. Pep, whatever he says, doesn't mean anything. Eddie Howe's no longer in the league, so he doesn't really give much information, but there's a bunch of different factors that you're now going to have to kind of take the manager's word for, in a sense, which I think is a good thing long term. I was either an advocate for letting us see the team news completely for the first game, or not letting us see it all, not this kind of middle ground where the media gets it and you have to rely on these Twitter sources in order to get the information that you require for the lineups. And this is a global game, is another aspect of it as well. So basically setting your team the night before, it's going to be the same for everybody. No one has to get up at 2:30 in the morning their time to get to look at the team news, because some of the games kick off at 4 a.m. their time, or whatever it may be. So I think this is fair for everyone. Set your team the night before, make your decisions, be firm with them, and yeah, hopefully your teammates do well. Tip number 2 is team flexibility for this season. As you can see, this is the team that I drafted for the stream that I did over on Twitter. Just a standard 3-4-3, going with a really expensive defender, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and 4.5 millions with a rotation goalkeeper, 4 midfielders with 3 premiums in there, and then 1 premium striker with 2 cheaper ones. With the team set up the way it is, it can be quite flexible no matter what the fixtures are in the opening game week, and depending on the fixtures in game week 2, 3, and 4, that's what you're going to be looking to set your team up to do. So it's rumored, as an example, that Leeds are going to be playing Newcastle at home, and Walker Peters is going to be playing Chelsea away. So with that in mind, we can say, oh, well, we favor the Leeds fixture at home versus a weaker opposition in Newcastle, so we'll play Dallas over Walker Peters, and you can rotate these players in and out as you so please. Same with rotating goalkeepers. It's a similar type of concept, where some players are going to play them no matter who they play against, pretty much, and depending on the fixture, you might want to transfer them out, but we'll get onto that sooner rather than later. But basically what you want to do is you have to look at players in terms of their fixtures and kind of how much they're going to be costing in that sense, so that you can maintain flexibility for your formation. Some weeks you'll want to play 3-5-2, some weeks you'll want to play 4-5-1, some weeks you'll want to play 3-4-3. You want to be able to have that option, and it actually is good to, when you go to draft your team, give yourself that little bit of buffer, maybe that 0.5 million, maybe that 1 million, just so that you can have the ability to transfer players in and out, depending on if there's going to be, if there's any injuries that you're looking at that for players might coming back. So Pulisic is a big example of that. Probably won't be in for the first couple of game weeks, but who are people going to replace in order to bring him in? Point number 3 is, as we mentioned earlier, player price points. So we have to look at players in regards to how much they cost and what slot they're taking up in our team. So as an example, we have Aubameyang, Salah, and Fernandes that we would consider premium assets. Werner would be considered a premium asset for the forward line, as their price bracket is slightly lower in that regard. So when you're trying to look at these types of players, look at their fixtures and see, are they worth it for the fixtures coming up. So it's supposed that Salah has West Ham away in his first game of the season. I think that is a great fixture. Again, if the first 4 fixtures are quite favorable, you would think that Salah would be a very good premium asset. Whereas let's say Aubameyang has United, Chelsea, maybe Leeds is potentially a tough fixture, and then Wolves as his first 4 fixtures, you would say that his premium, his asset would be diminished because of the fixtures that he has. Now, Aubameyang is good enough to score against most, but it's just one of those things where, would you rather start off with maybe a Raheem Sterling or a Kevin De Bruyne who has potentially better fixtures in that regard, and then you can kind of work around these kind of price point slots, which is why I said to give yourself a little bit of buffer, 0.5, maybe even 1 million overall, so that you can make these sorts of transfers and changes as you see fit. But you should be setting your team up going into the first 3 to 4 game weeks guaranteed, because I don't think there's going to be any blanks, because both Manchester United and Man City were the last 2 teams in Europe, and they have since which been knocked out of their respective European competitions. So they should be given a month, which is basically exactly on the day that the Premier League starts. Maybe their fixtures are pushed to the Sunday or something like that to give them the exact 30 days. We'll have to see on that regard. But yeah, in terms of price points, you want to be looking at Aubameyang not as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. You want to be looking at the 12 million costed player that may have very good fixtures in game week 1 through 4, and who is he being compared to into this, let's say, this other 12 million player in Salah that has X amount of fixtures against whatever teams. That's where you kind of want to be looking at, and who could potentially be the replacement. Names don't really matter too much. You have to kind of keep emotion attached. I'm a United fan, so when United was doing well, it was very hard for me to kind of be like, okay, I have to actually bring them in because they're good players. But then there's all this suspicion that they might do badly. Same for people bringing in Liverpool. Same for people bringing in Chelsea. All the fans of all the clubs, you want to back your players, but it's maybe the suspicion of doubling down on, oh, I have them in my team and I want them to win. Things can go wrong there, as it were. But FPL is a strategy game. You have to think of it just kind of in terms of numbers, in terms of fixtures and that sort of stuff. So that's basically what you have to look at that for tip number 3. The penultimate tip number 4 for this fantasy season is going to be rotating the big hitters. So kind of leading in from point number 3, we want to be looking at various different players that are going to be costing, quite a lot of our budget in the initial part of the season, because we only have 100 million to spend, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be getting us the most points. They're going to be the ones most likely going to be our captaincy choices, and we're going to have to be looking at when they have good fixtures and when they don't, if their form starts to improve or if their form is on a downturn for the worst. And we have to look at those 2 things in tandem, as well as XG and XA, which is expected goals, expected assists, and kind of determine whether it's worth keeping them or not. But mainly fixtures and form in the eye test are the 3 main kind of the spearhead, as it were, for looking at a player. So if I see that Mohamed Salah, as an example, has fixtures 1 through 4, they're pretty good fixtures, 1 through 3 mainly, and then 4 is kind of iffy. We can captain him in the first 3, maybe not captain him in the 4th one, and then let's say 5 through 8 he plays Chelsea, United, City, and Spurs. two of which of those games being away, you would think, well, you know, Salah can score against those teams, but you would probably favor bringing in somebody else. Let's say Raheem Sterling in that time. He does play Liverpool, but he also plays, let's say, Newcastle, Fulham, and West Brom. You would say, okay, it's probably worth it to transfer Salah out, not for a hit, and bring in Sterling because he's most likely going to get you more points. And you have to not be afraid to basically make that move, even if there's value tied up in Salah, because you can bring in Sterling, who will definitely be better probably in those 4 fixtures. Again, there's a chance that he might not. Maybe Salah goes absolutely ballistic and he's just on a crazy tear and he just blitzes through every team and Liverpool goes on to win the league again. But you kind of have to play it by the numbers. The percentage chance of Salah probably doing well in those games is a lot lower than the percentage chance of Raheem Sterling, as an example, playing against a lot weaker teams across 4 games. And that's kind of what you have to look at. You have to look at when you bring in a big hitter, you're not going to be bringing them typically in for 1 game week. It's going to be at least 2. They could also potentially be a captaincy choice as well. And that's what you also have to look at there for tip number 4. And tip number 5 is looking at very cheap players that are in a starting position. So I've highlighted Dallas here. I've also got Ferguson as well from Crystal Palace. Vinagre is another one for Wolves. He would be a familiar face for those that have seen him play in the bits last season. But these are types of players that are very cheap and enable our team in 100 million that we have for the start of next season. Now, Ferguson is a bit of an exception to the rule, so we're basically mainly here looking at 4 million goalkeepers, 4 million defenders, 4.5 million midfielders, and 4.5 million forwards. These are the lowest price that they could possibly be without price reductions or increases going into the season. But Nathan Ferguson was someone that Crystal Palace has purchased, and he's going to potentially be the next Aaron Wan-Bissaka, or be playing in at right back starting for them next season, as they don't really have a proper right back. Now, if he's getting a starting position at 4 million, he's going to be an auto include for everyone, no matter how bad Crystal Palace are, because we know that he's going to get starts, and we know that he's going to get just points off the bench, and he gets us that extra 0.5 million, which we can use on assets that we know are going to be in our teams game in, game out, like Salah, like Aubameyang, like Mane, like these sorts of players. So getting on the train for these guys as soon as possible is very, very good. And also, if they're combined with something where they're, you know, very cheap, as well as they have a, you know, maybe they're being played out of position. So let's say Nathan Ferguson comes in and he's supposedly a right back. He starts, but then Crystal Palace switched to a back 3 system where he's playing as a wing back. That adds a little bit more value to him as well, because then he'll be playing basically as a right-sided midfielder, which is exactly what we want. This is where Vinagre and Dallas come in. With Johnny with a long-term knee injury, could be out for several months. Vinagre is a player that's going to be playing on the left-hand side of the midfield as a left wing back, and he's at 4.5 million. Not 4 million, but still a left winger that plays for Wolves that's going to get a lot of clean sheets at 4.5 million. We'll take that any day of the week. Same with Dallas. He's super flexible for Leeds from the little bits that I've seen of him. Can play left back, likes to get forward a lot. Also can play left wing as well, just an out-and-out left winger. And the way Leeds play, they're left fullback, they're left-sided midfielder in a midfield 3. And their left winger, mirrored on the right-hand side, can be in any different position at any given time in an attack. So there are times you might see Stuart, Dallas, you know, right at the edge of the box. There's times you might see him swinging in across on the left wing, and there's times you might also see him play a bit of a reserve role, making deeper crosses from his back line. But these sorts of players are super important to kind of get on the bandwagon as soon as you see them doing what they're doing. There's also some, you know, kind of footage of them playing in the previous season where you can kind of get a view of how they're playing. With new signings, it's a bit trickier. So in the case of Ferguson here, you may be able to see what he's done in his former club. However, you're not sure if he's going to actually start at Crystal Palace, but being 4 million, I think he's definitely going to see game time, and he might even be a starter and could be the next Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who was at 4 million and fantastic for Crystal Palace overall, who did keep quite a few clean sheets. Now, that's not saying he's going to be him, but just being a cheaper defender that we know is going to get points game in, game out, definitely quite good as a third slot on our bench, being at his price point. So we kind of have to look at these players. You got the 3 main points is basically to take from this is price point with the ability to start most games, basically. An added bonus would be if they're mispositioned. So if, let's say, Ferguson here is playing right wing instead of right back. And then lastly would depend on how well their team is doing. So if they're even doing remotely good, you're definitely going to want to bring these players in. So Lundstrom was a prime example. Came in as a 4 million defender, so was getting clean sheets on a team that was keeping clean sheets, as well as he was playing basically the number 10 role for the Sheffield United team. And he was getting returns, which is the crazy thing about it. So he was getting these crazy double-digit figure holes, and if you got on him early, like I did, then you had him from when he was 4 million, and he ended up rising almost like, I think there was a point where he was like at least 5 or 5.2 million or something crazy like that. So you have to kind of look out for these players, keep them on your watch list, and hopefully they can serve you well in the FPL season. And that's going to do it for this FPL video. Make sure you like the video if you enjoy it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new, and make sure to turn those notification bells on as soon as it is readily available. Also, like I mentioned before, make sure to follow us over on Twitter and Twitch. It's PilotFlame226. As you can see down below me, links are in the description below. Also, if you want to join our league, I have the league code over in my Twitter bio. Make sure to follow us over on Twitter, and then you join the league, and then you will get a shout out if you win it at the end of the season. I'm looking forward to it. Twitter is also where we post our new videos for YouTube, as well as when we go live over on Twitch for FPL or other gaming content. And Twitch is where, like I mentioned, we'll be doing our weekly game week discussions. We'll be doing another stream for when the fixtures come out on Friday the 21st of August at 7 p.m. EST, and we can be looking forward to that, because then we can actually make some, kind of guesses as to who's people are going to be putting in their teams for the first 4 game weeks. If we see that Man United has very bad fixtures, as they're rumored to have Arsenal right off the start, they may have a bit of tough fixtures potentially at the start of the season, so you may be wanting to looking at Liverpool or Chelsea or Man City assets rather than them, and then rotate them back in when they have better fixtures. So we have to kind of see how that plays out. But thanks for watching the video, and until the next one, take care.